My name is Thomas. I was a simple carpenter. I worked with wood all day long. My hands were rough and dirty, but my heart was very full. I had a beautiful wife named Clara and a baby boy, Oliver. Clara was young and very pretty. She loved nice dresses and shiny things. I worked extra hours to buy her gifts. I wanted to give her a good life. But a carpenter does not make much money. Our apartment was small and old. Oliver was 6 months old. He had big brown eyes and a sweet smile. Every evening I ran home to see him. Holding my son took away all my tiredness. He was my little piece of heaven. I loved my small family deeply. One cold evening in December, I worked very late. I was making a large wooden table. My muscles ached and my fingers were sore. I finished the job and got my pay. I bought a warm meat pie for Clara. I walked home quickly. I climbed the dark stairs to our apartment. I expected to smell dinner cooking. I expected to hear Clara singing to Oliver. But the hallway was completely silent. I unlocked the front door and stepped inside. The room was cold and dark. "Clara? I am home," I called out gently. Nobody answered me. I turned on the small living room light. The apartment looked very strange. The closet doors were wide open. Half of the clothes were gone. My heart started to beat very fast. I walked into the bedroom. Clara's suitcases were missing. Her makeup bottles were gone from the table. A terrible fear gripped my chest. Where was my wife? Then I heard a weak sound. It came from the corner of the room. It was Oliver. He was crying in his small wooden crib. His face was red and wet with tears. He sounded very hungry and tired. I ran to the crib and picked him up. "Shoo, Papa is here," I whispered. I patted his small back. Then I saw a piece of white paper on the bed. My name was written on it. My hands shook as I opened it. The letter was short and cruel. "Thomas, I am sorry," Clara wrote. "I cannot live this poor life anymore. I met a rich man. He can give me the world. Do not look for me." I read the words again and again. I could not breathe. She left us. She left her own baby. I looked at the small metal box on the shelf. Our savings box was wide open and totally empty. She took all our money. She took my heart and crushed it. The meat pie fell from my hand to the floor. My legs became very weak. I fell to my knees holding my crying son. How could a mother do this? How could she abandon her own flesh and blood? The pain was worse than any physical injury. I felt like I was drowning in a dark, cold ocean. I cried loudly in the empty room. Oliver cried louder, feeling my sadness. His tiny hand grabbed my dirty shirt. He looked at me with his big, innocent eyes. He was hungry and scared. He did not know his mother was gone forever. His touch pulled me back to reality. I wiped my tears with my rough hand. I could not be weak now. My son needed me. I looked around the empty, cold apartment. We had no money and no wife. But we had each other. I kissed Oliver's warm forehead. I made a silent promise in that dark room. "I will be your father and your mother," I whispered. "I will never leave you." The long, hard fight had just begun. The landlord came the next morning. Clara took the rent money. I had nothing to give him. He was a cold man. He told me to leave the apartment by night. I packed our few clothes into a plastic bag. I wrapped Oliver in his warmest blanket. We walked out into the freezing street. The wind cut my face like a knife. I had nowhere to go. We walked for hours. People passed by us without looking. The sun went down and the city became very cold. Oliver started to shiver in my arms. I had to find a safe place quickly. I remembered an old junkyard near the river. My friend used to work there. I found a broken, rusted delivery truck in the back. The doors were unlocked. It smelled like old oil and dirt. We climbed inside the back of the truck. It was completely dark. The metal floor was freezing like ice. I put some old cardboard boxes on the floor. It was a terrible place for a baby. Oliver started to cry loudly. He was very cold and hungry. I only had one small bottle of milk left. I held him close to my chest and fed him. He drank it very fast. When he finished, he still shivered. The winter wind blew through the broken windows. I took off my heavy winter coat. I wrapped it tightly around my son. I only wore a thin shirt. The cold hit my body immediately. My teeth chattered and my fingers turned blue. But I did not care. Oliver stopped crying. He felt the warmth of my coat and fell asleep. I sat in the dark truck holding him. I rubbed his small back to keep the blood flowing. My own body was shaking violently. I closed my eyes and prayed for the sun to rise. Morning finally came. The pale light woke me up. My arms and legs were completely numb. I could barely move. But Oliver was warm and safe in my coat. He smiled up at me. We left the junkyard. I had an empty stomach. I walked to a bakery down the street. I looked through the window at the fresh bread. I had no money to buy any food. I went to the back alley of the bakery. I found a plastic bag in the trash bin. It had some old, hard bread inside. I wiped the dirt off carefully. I ate the dry bread. I was ashamed, but I had to survive. I needed strength to carry my son. I chewed the hard bread slowly. I promised Oliver he would never have to eat from the trash. The days were very long and difficult. We lived in that freezing truck for a whole week. I washed Oliver in public restrooms with cold water. I tried to find small jobs on the street. Some people gave me a few coins. I bought cheap milk for Oliver. I ignored my own hunger. Every night, I froze in the truck so my son could stay warm. Life was incredibly cruel. But every time Oliver touched my face, I felt strong. His tiny smile was my only fire in the cold winter. I was a father, and I would not give up. I needed a real job to rent a room. I walked into many stores and factories. I asked for work, but they all said no. They looked at the baby in my arms and shook their heads. Nobody wanted a worker with a crying baby. Finally, I found an old bakery at the edge of town. They needed a man to move heavy flour bags at night. The owner was a loud, grumpy man. I begged him for the job. I promised to work twice as hard. The owner looked at Oliver and sighed. "The baby stays in the back room," he ordered. "If he cries and bothers me, you are fired." I thanked him many times. I finally had a way to buy milk. I found a small wooden basket in the back room. I put soft towels inside it. I laid Oliver in the basket gently. He looked like a little angel sleeping in the flour dust. I went out to work. The work was extremely hard. The flour bags were very heavy. My muscles burned and my back ached. The factory was hot and loud. But I smiled every time I saw a new bag. It meant money for my son. One night, I was very tired. My eyes felt heavy. I pushed a cart full of heavy bags toward the big mixing machine. The machine had large, metal gears turning very fast. It was very dangerous. Suddenly, the heavy cart slipped on some spilled flour. It rolled forward quickly. I reached out to grab it. My foot slipped, and I fell forward. My right hand went straight into the moving metal gears. A terrible crunching sound echoed in the room. A sharp, burning pain shot up my arm. I screamed out in agony. The gears crushed my fingers before I could pull my hand out. I fell to the dirty floor. The owner ran over and stopped the machine. He looked at my bloody hand and yelled, "You need a hospital now," he shouted. My fingers were broken and bleeding heavily. The pain made me dizzy and sick. I held my bleeding hand tightly. I thought about the hospital bill. It would cost hundreds of dollars. I would lose all the money for Oliver's milk. I looked at the owner and shook my head. "No hospital," I said through my teeth. "I cannot afford it." The owner looked at me like I was crazy. "You will lose your fingers, idiot," he yelled. But I completely refused to go. I walked to the sink and washed the blood away. The pain was worse than death. Tears rolled down my dusty face. I found some clean, white cloth. I wrapped it tightly around my broken, bleeding fingers. My hand throbbed with hot pain. I walked back to the heavy flour bags. The owner watched me in total shock. "What are you doing?" he asked. "I have to finish my shift," I replied softly. I picked up a heavy bag with my good arm. I used my bleeding hand to balance it. Every step sent sharp pain through my body. I bit my lip until it tasted like blood. I did not stop. When the sun came up, my shift was over. My white bandage was completely red with blood. I walked into the back room. Oliver was just waking up. He smiled when he saw my dusty face. I touched his soft cheek with my good hand. "Papa is okay," I whispered to him. The pain in my crushed hand was terrible, but my broken fingers bought him milk. The sacrifice was completely worth it. 3 years passed slowly. Oliver was now a beautiful 3-year-old boy. He was very gentle and sweet. But something was wrong. He never made any sounds. He never said, "Papa." He lived in a completely silent world. I noticed he did not turn around when I dropped a heavy pan. He did not wake up when dogs barked loudly. I felt very worried. I took my son to a free public clinic to get help. The doctor checked Oliver's ears very carefully. He looked at me with a sad face. "Your son is deaf," the doctor said. "He needs a special hearing aid immediately. If he waits too long, he will never speak." I asked the doctor about the price. He said the device cost $2,000. My heart dropped. I only made enough money for rent and cheap food. $2,000 was an impossible mountain for me. I left the clinic feeling completely desperate. I had to find the money. I went to a rich, greedy man in our town. He lent money to poor people at very high interest. I begged him for a loan. I got on my knees and cried. The rich man just laughed at me. He looked at my ugly, crushed hand. "How can a cripple pay me back?" he mocked. He told his guards to throw me out. The guards punched my stomach and kicked my face. They threw me into the dirty street. I lay there tasting my own blood. I felt so useless and small. But I could not give up on my son. I walked home with a swollen face. I opened a small wooden box under my bed. Inside was a gold wedding ring. It belonged to my dead mother. It was my only precious treasure in the whole world. I took the ring to a pawn shop. I cried when I handed it to the shop owner. He gave me $500. It was not enough. I needed to find a job that paid a lot. I searched the city for the most dangerous work. Nobody wanted these jobs. Finally, I was hired to clean windows on very tall buildings. It paid well because it was extremely terrifying and risky. The next day, I stood on a tiny platform. I was outside the 50th floor of a skyscraper. The wind howled fiercely. I looked down at the tiny cars below. My stomach turned with pure fear. I held the ropes with my damaged hand. My missing fingers made my grip very weak. Suddenly, the wind pushed the platform hard. I slipped and almost fell off the edge. Panic rushed through my chest. I hung on with all my strength. My crushed hand screamed in pain. But then I imagined Oliver's silent face. I wanted to hear him call me Papa. That thought made my grip like strong iron. I cleaned the glass carefully. I risked my life in the sky every single day. I ate only plain rice to save money. My shoes had holes, and my clothes were torn. But I did not care. Month after month, I added money to an old jar. Every dollar was a drop of my sweat and blood. I watched the jar fill up. I was finally going to buy my son's voice. Finally, the glass jar was completely full. I counted the crumpled bills and heavy coins one last time. I had exactly $2,000. My hands shook with extreme excitement. I took Oliver to the clinic that very morning. Today, my son's silent world would finally end. The doctor smiled and brought out a small, shiny box. Inside was the tiny hearing aid. It looked like a very delicate piece of magic. I sat Oliver on my lap and held him close. The doctor gently placed the small device into Oliver's right ear. The room was very quiet. The doctor pressed a tiny button to turn the device on. Oliver suddenly gasped and jumped in my arms. His big brown eyes grew wide with complete shock. He looked around in total confusion. He was hearing the world for the first time. I leaned in close to his face. My heart was beating so fast it hurt. I took a deep breath. "Oliver," I said softly. My voice was rough and shaking. Oliver froze and slowly turned his little head toward me. He reached out his small hand. He touched my lips with his soft fingers. He looked deeply into my wet eyes. "Papa is here," I whispered, holding back my tears. "I love you, my brave boy." A beautiful, bright smile slowly appeared on his face. He opened his small mouth. He struggled to make a sound. Then a tiny, sweet voice broke the silence. "Papa," he said slowly. The sound was very clumsy, but it was absolutely perfect. It was the most beautiful music I had ever heard in my entire life. I could not hold back my tears anymore. I hugged my son tightly against my chest. I cried loudly with pure, overwhelming joy. All the hunger, the pain, and the broken fingers did not matter. My son called me Papa. My precious boy was finally saved. For years passed like a warm breeze. Oliver was now 7 years old. He was a smart and happy boy. He wore his hearing aid every day. He loved to talk and sing loudly. His sweet voice filled our home with endless joy. I did not clean high windows anymore. I saved every dollar to start a new life. I opened a small bakery on a quiet street. It had a bright red door and clean windows. The smell of fresh bread floated in the air every morning. My right hand was still missing 2 fingers. It was ugly and full of thick scars. But it was very strong. I woke up at 4 every morning to mix the heavy dough. I baked the best bread and sweet cakes in the town. Oliver came to the bakery after school. He did not play in the dirty streets. He put on a tiny white apron. He loved to help me shape the sweet cookies. We laughed and threw white flour at each other. We were a happy team. Our shop was always busy. The neighbors loved our warm bread and kind smiles. They knew our sad past. They respected my hard work. Sometimes, kind older women gave Oliver extra candies. We were poor before, but now we were rich in love. Every evening, I locked the bright red door. I counted the coins in the register. I finally had enough money to buy Oliver new shoes. We sat by the warm oven and drank milk. I looked at my growing son and felt deep peace. The cold truck and the hungry nights were gone. We survived the darkest storms together. I built this warm life with my own broken hands. I thought nothing could ever hurt us again. Our little world was finally safe and completely perfect. Far away, Clara lived in a huge mansion. She married a rich politician. She had expensive clothes and diamond rings. But her life was a dark secret. Her rich husband was in deep trouble. The newspapers wrote bad stories about his lies and dirty money. His political career was dying fast. He needed a good story to fix his image. He told Clara to fix the problem. "We need people to feel sorry for us," he yelled. Clara was desperate. She searched the internet for a sad story to use. Suddenly, she saw a local video online. It showed a small bakery in our town. The video praised a hard-working disabled father and his deaf son. Clara looked closely at the screen. She saw Oliver's face. She recognized my scarred hands immediately. She did not feel any love or guilt. She only saw a golden chance. She smiled a cold, wicked smile. "This is perfect," she told her husband. "I will be the sad mother who lost her child. We will bring him back to this big house." A few days later, a long black car stopped at my bakery. The red door opened slowly. A woman walked in wearing an expensive silk dress. She wore dark glasses and heavy perfume. The strong smell hid the sweet scent of our fresh bread. I wiped the flour off my hands. I looked up to welcome the new customer. My heart suddenly stopped beating. My blood ran completely cold. It was Clara. She took off her dark glasses. Her face was older but still very proud and selfish. "Hello, Thomas," she said softly. Her voice sounded fake. Oliver was shaping dough next to me. He looked at the strange woman. He did not know she was the mother who left him to starve. I stepped in front of my son quickly. "What do you want?" I asked angrily. I hid my crippled hand behind my back. I felt the old pain returning. 7 years of peace vanished in 1 second. The monster from my past was standing in my safe, warm shop. A terrible storm was coming. Before I could speak, 3 men walked into my shop. They carried large video cameras and bright lights. A man in a sharp suit stood next to Clara. He was a rich lawyer. Flashbulbs blinded my eyes. They were recording everything. Clara suddenly started to cry loudly. It was a very good fake act. "My sweet baby," she cried out for the cameras. She knelt down on the dirty floor. She held out a large, shiny box toward Oliver. It was a very expensive video game. Oliver hid tightly behind my legs. He did not want the shiny box. He looked at the flashing cameras with fear. I pushed the shiny box away with my good hand. Stop this right now, I told Clara angrily. Turn off those cameras and leave. The lawyer smiled a very cold smile. He handed me a thick white paper. We're taking the boy back, the lawyer said. Clara is his real mother. She can give him a huge mansion and the best doctors. You are just a poor, disabled baker. Clara stopped crying and wiped her dry eyes. She looked at my scarred hand with deep disgust. Look at you, Thomas, she whispered coldly. You are a cripple. You make him work in this hot, dirty shop. The judge will give him to me easily. If you fight me, I will destroy you, she threatened. My husband has very powerful friends. I will shut down this tiny bakery tomorrow. You will be on the street again. Just give me the boy and I will leave you alone. My chest felt heavy with pure panic. She wanted to steal my reason for breathing. She had money, power, and cruel lies. I only had flour and a broken hand. The fear of losing Oliver made my legs shake. But then I felt Oliver's tiny hand holding mine. I remembered the cold nights in the freezing truck. I remembered the blood on the flour bags. I survived the worst hell for this boy. I looked Clara directly in her cold eyes. You left him to die, I said loudly. You cannot buy him now. I will fight you with my last breath. Clara smirked and turned around. The cameras followed her out the door. The real war was just beginning. We met in a large, cold courtroom. Clara wore white and cried fake tears. The judge listened to her sad lies. She looked like a perfect, caring mother. Her lawyer looked very proud. Her lawyer pointed a finger at me. He is a poor cripple, the lawyer said. He makes the boy work in a dirty bakery. Clara can give the child a mansion and the best doctors. It was my turn to speak. I stood up slowly. I did not shout or cry. I just raised my right hand. I showed my ugly, crushed fingers to the judge and the room. She talks about a mansion, I said. But when she left us, we slept in a freezing truck. I gave him my only coat. I ate from the trash to buy his milk. I pointed to Oliver's ear. My son is deaf, I said loudly. I crushed my hand in a machine for his food. I risked my life on high buildings to buy his hearing aid. I bled for his sweet voice, I continued. I sold my mother's ring for him. A true parent sacrifices everything. A mother does not abandon her hungry baby for a rich man. Clara looked angry but tried to smile. She held out a shiny new toy. Come to Mommy, Oliver, she said sweetly. We will go to a huge toy store right now. The room was completely silent. Oliver looked at the rich, strange woman. He shook his head. He ran across the room and stood next to me. He held my leg tightly. Oliver grabbed my scarred, broken hand. He held it up high for the judge to see. He looked at Clara with brave eyes. His small voice was very clear. My papa's hands are ugly, Oliver said. But they make warm bread. They feed me. They hold me when I cry. You are not my mother. You are a bad stranger. Clara turned totally pale. The proud lawyer dropped his pen. The judge smiled softly at my brave son. The rich woman's lies were destroyed. Pure love defeated her dirty money forever. News of the trial spread quickly. Journalists wrote about Clara's terrible lies. Her rich husband lost his political career completely. He blamed Clara and divorced her immediately. She lost her huge mansion and all her shiny diamonds. She became poor and totally alone. People asked me if I felt happy about her ruin. I just shook my head and smiled. I did not care about her dark life at all. Hate is a very heavy rock to carry. I dropped that rock many years ago. I only had room for love. It was a beautiful, golden Sunday morning. The sun shone brightly through our bakery windows. The sweet smell of fresh bread filled the air. Oliver wore his tiny white apron. He stood next to me at the wooden table. We were ready to bake our famous sweet cookies. Oliver laughed and pushed his hands into the soft dough. He shaped the dough into little stars and hearts. His hearing aid caught the happy sounds of our shop. He sang a silly song while he worked. I watched him with a deep, peaceful joy in my chest. I looked down at my own right hand. I saw the missing fingers and the thick, ugly scars. A long time ago, I hated this broken hand. I thought I was a useless, crippled man. But now, I saw the beautiful truth. These broken hands built a warm, safe home. They bought my son's voice and his happy future. They were the strongest armor in the whole world. Oliver grabbed my scarred hand and kissed it gently. "Best Papa," he smiled. Our beautiful life was completely perfect.